More than half of patients have designated caregivers. A little more than 2,600 patients have caregivers with more than one patient. In 2005, a loophole was closed that limited the number of people one grower could produce for. However, there is still no limit on the number of plants at a site or how many patients a caregiver can have. Look at this photo of a caregiver's grow site with multiple patients and growers. Note the size of the plants as compared to the people in the photo. There are 22,771 registered grow sites in Oregon. It's become a big business with little control over where the product truly gets used. Some of the medical marijuana is showing up on our streets. This obviously was not the intent of a compassionate voter who wanted to ease the suffering of some very ill people. There are several illnesses for which prescriptions for medical marijuana are being recommended. Less than 50 for Alzheimer's, 534 for glaucoma, 654 for HIV and AIDS, 857 for cachexia, 974 for seizures, and more than 1,500 for cancer. These sicknesses were the ones we thought we were voting to help. Now look at these. 5,049 for nausea, 8,225 for persistent muscle spasms, 34,303 for severe pain. All very broad illnesses, unlike the ones we thought really needed a prescription for medical marijuana. Is our compassionate intent truly being upheld? We'll look deeper into that question throughout this program.
That's some pretty interesting information right off the bat there about this medical marijuana issue and how the intent of the voters versus 11 years later, where we're at. We're with Deputy Chief Tim George of the Medford Police Department, Lieutenant Tim Doney, and also Medford Police Department and Sheriff Mike Winters are our guests here tonight on our Jackson County Close-Up Show, where we really bring you in a close-up look at what's going on inside Jackson County. And tonight, I think you're getting a good picture of what we're seeing. Let me just bring in the sheriff here, because this whole thing is just becoming more and more. I mean, the front pages of the papers, we're hearing it more and more just in discussions with people as it's coming forward of what's happening. You're involved in, I just want to bring with you another issue that you brought up with, is that handguns in this law.
Yes.
How did that become? I mean, how did that get to where it is? Because it's a fascinating, is it a constitutional issue? I don't know, but it's really interesting. Tell me about that.
Well, my point of view on it is, that as law enforcement officers, we are sworn to uphold both state and federal regulations, and in this particular lawsuit that we're in, a medical marijuana card holder has applied for a concealed handgun license and put down on the form that she was a full-time user of medical marijuana and such, and we denied that. It went through the court, and at a lower level, we were told that we had to issue the card. Of course,
you had to issue the card.
Yes.
I mean the concealed weapon permit.
Yes, and we appealed that. We're going through the appeal process, but one thing that I'm trying to do is get this high enough in the state court system that we have a clear, definitive, definite ruling. Because I don't want at some point someone from the federal government either coming after me because I violated my oath, or coming even after Cynthia Willis, who filed the complaint. We need to, because marijuana is still in the federal statutes it's in violation.
It's a violation. What do you guys think of that? That was an interesting article when I read that, and you all face the same kinds of things.
Again, it's all these other consequences that the medical marijuana program didn't take into consideration when all this happened. Again, the whole, we take an oath to uphold federal, state, and local law, so Oregon law enforcement gets put in the middle here. Generally, the federal folks, the DEA, they don't want to get involved in medical marijuana cases unless it is extreme, a large amount. So
what is a large amount, though, I guess, anymore, isn't it?
And again, the line keeps getting further and further out there because you see more and more abuse of the system. But at the state level where we're at, we have to deal with all the other pieces of that. And there's all sorts of pieces that fall into that. And how many growers can you have at one site? The whole firearms issue with people that are involved in both growers, care providers, and card holders. All of the whole industry that supplies that on the supply side. There's just a whole bunch of stuff that evolves around this thing. And technically, if you really want to get technical about it, those people involved in the illegal grow or way out of compliance, and all those other people that are profiting from that, knowing that that's going on and participating in it, it is a criminal conspiracy to make money. And if you're growing marijuana and selling it to make money, it is a criminal conspiracy to manufacture, possess, and deliver a controlled substance. So it can get real confusing for law enforcement. Tim said it earlier that if you can't sleep tonight, read the act itself. Okay, that'll put you to sleep, number one. And two, look at all of the other consequences and unanswered questions, because we don't get a list like the public thinks, that we get a list of all of the medical marijuana card holders in Oregon. We don't have a list of 38,000 card holders.
That's not not public record because of the medical word medical in there. Is that what it is?
It's protected. I think sometimes people have the impression that law enforcement can just get a carte blanche list of a particular street and know who's a grower and who's not, and that's not the case.
You can't do that.
It's not. We have the ability to call the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program 24/7. But we have to have a name and a date of birth or a specific address. And if we're off on spelling or date of birth or any of that, it creates a problem. If we call in a particular address, they don't give us names associated with the address. They give us the number of cards.
They're not helping in terms of.
So, I mean, and we really run into those same problems, quite honestly, with card holders, because there's really a trail and connect the dots between the patient card holder, a primary caregiver, and a grower. And while the current law says that you can possess 24 ounces of usable marijuana, you also can have 6 mature plants and 18 starter plants. And those obviously are with the grower or at the registered grow site. But if we stop a patient card holder, that 24 ounces can be spread between the patient, the caregiver, and the grower, and they're not required to tell us who their caregiver or their grower is necessarily. So if that makes any sense, they could have 24 ounces. The caregiver behind the curtain can have 24 ounces. The grower can have 24 ounces. It's very, very difficult on enforcement and regulatory function. And the reality is law enforcement, we're not in a position right now where we're supposed to be a regulatory agency for
this. This is not your. It's a medical thing. You're not supposed to be doing that, right?
No.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But we get criminal complaints on a regular basis, and we're trying to deal with. Quite honestly, it's a mess.
It's a mess.
We became experts by default.
Experts. That's the best way to become an expert is by default.
It's the short straw.
How much money are we talking? Well, first of all, does a medical marijuana person, if I have a card and I have, a caregiver, do I pay for that? I pay for the product, correct?
No, you cannot pay for the product.
You cannot pay.
You can pay for the supplies and the utilities that go into that. So what I'm telling you right now is that there are a lot of people that are very caring, that are growing for people, and there's probably a lot of people that are out for profit that are growing for people as well. And the money is incredible. I mean, we've talked a little bit earlier, but marijuana produced here at $2,100 to $3,000 a pound, $5,000 by the time it hits Minneapolis, $5,000 to $6,000 on the East Coast. We've been involved in some cases this past year where we're taking 100 pounds of excess marijuana from a grower. I mean, you do the math, $250,000, $300,000. We were involved in a criminal case with another regional drug team within the past year. And in that particular case, it all started back on the East Coast because the marijuana was coming from the southwest part of the state. And in this particular case, we set up what was $1 million buy bust. It was $1 million worth of marijuana. And quite honestly, in any other drug, if we did that, we'd find counter surveillance on the part of the traffickers involved in that, and there really wasn't any of that. It was all about money, money, money. The marijuana wasn't produced at one location. It was produced at a multitude of locations. It was basically co-opted marijuana, and some was illegal, and much of it was medical marijuana.
Is there a statistic that you can share about how much the marijuana crop at Jackson County is actually producing? I mean, are we talking millions of dollars here? That's becoming an economic kind of factor that all of a sudden we're going to look away to because it's generating, obviously, people who are growing and they're selling, they're making money. As you're saying, you're seeing
Well, you'd have to do the combination, because on public land it is a huge cash crop.
But even though they're collecting thousands of plants, they're still not able to control that?
What I can tell you when you're talking about money, on marijuana taken off of public lands in Jackson County this past year, or with a nexus to Jackson County, retail value is estimated to be over $320 million. Okay.
Really?
So
320
drugs seized by our local drug and gang task force that includes some marijuana and some other drugs was over $2.2 million in this past calendar year. We're just catching a little bit of it. I mean, quite honestly, if I had more employees and more hours in the day, we could be out doing many, many more cases, because we have to triage the cases that come in, because on a daily basis we're taking a half a dozen complaints, and it may take us to Pinehurst, it may take us to Roosh, it may take us to Prospect, or it may take us to Trail. And the reality is we don't know where we're going to be from day to day working on cases, and there's some that don't even get handled because we just don't have the time.
That's fascinating. I mean, it really is. It's about following the money. $320 million worth of, I guess, income generated. That's a staggering figure.
That's just the value on public land.
On public land, just on public land.
And that's only the weed that was discovered, harvested, and they worked the case on in combination. That doesn't count all the stuff that...
And it doesn't include any of the medical marijuana stuff that we're talking about, in terms of you'll be able to grow your own, and if you can have 6 plants and you can have pounds, people are selling that, is what you're saying they're doing.
And maybe just a little bit of a statistic, and maybe it'll be shown in the show later, but Jackson County is the 6th most populous county in the state of Oregon, yet we have the 2nd most number of cardholders in the state. So we either have a lot of sick people, and I'm sure we do have some people that are sick, or we have a really good climate for growing. And the reality is we have almost 5,000 cardholders in a county of about 206,000 people. Okay, we have more cardholders in Jackson County than in Lane County, Washington County, Clackamas County, Marion County. The only county that we follow in the footsteps of is Multnomah County, Portland. And so that's staggering numbers. And I think sometimes people at the other end of the state don't realize, because it's not in their neighborhood, but it really has caused a huge effect on rural Oregon.
Yes. Rural Oregon is also the most depressed economically in our state, and so those things are going to come up because people have no jobs. There's nothing for them to do. Look at Northern California. You hear those stories about this all the time. So it's spread its way up to here now, hasn't it? And the laws make it easy to do. Boy, what a fascinating story is tonight here about medical marijuana and the issues, the unintended consequences, the issues that have arisen since voters first passed that law. It's all about the money. We have another video to share with you. Follow the money.
It's all about the economics. Follow the money.
Not everyone using medical marijuana is abusing the system for profit, but the current law opens itself to abuse. The financial gains are huge, and the drug traffickers are creative, resourceful, and manipulative. First, we must look at the committee overseeing the Oregon medical marijuana program. Since 2005, this committee has been appointed by the Department of Health and Human Services Director. It's an 11-member committee made up of the following: registered patients, designated primary caregivers, people responsible for grow sites, and advocates for the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act. There is not a requirement of people involved in drug treatment, the medical community, law enforcement, prosecution professionals, defense professionals, and judges. These are the people with great insight on the way the law is affecting our communities and what is happening in our neighborhoods. Who decided this? Is this what we intended? Did we want to allow the very people with access to medical marijuana to oversee the program? Where are the checks and balances? There are rules within the law that make it difficult for law enforcement to separate the legitimate user from the system abusers. The police cannot get the information they need when investigating potential abuse. When officers ask the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program staff a question, those officers are only given a yes or no answer. When they ask if a specific person has a valid registry ID card, they get a yes or a no. If asked if a specific person is a caregiver, they get a yes or a no. If they find a place which might be a grow site, Again, a yes or a no. No details and little help.